Langston Price was 41 years old, a civil engineer who had spent 14 years building an infrastructure consulting firm on the same principle his mother had given him when he was 9 years old. Measure the load before you commit to the span. He drove a 7-year-old truck. He wore his father's watch to every job that mattered. On a Saturday in November, he buried his mother. His wife stood at the graveside with a man Langston recognized, not from a name, not from an introduction, from the particular way a man stands beside a woman he has been standing beside for a long time. He was dressed in mourning clothes, and he had his hand on Renata's arm, and he looked at Langston once, briefly, with the expression of a person who is hoping to be invisible. Langston looked at his mother's coffin. He did not look away from it again. 2 weeks later, in a conference room on the 6th floor of a building downtown, his mother's attorney read the will aloud. Renata was present. She had been expecting to hear about an estate she had been quietly calculating for the better part of a year. She had not calculated correctly. She had no idea what his mother had spent 30 years building, or what his mother had spent her last good months protecting. What she heard that afternoon would cost her everything she had been timing her next move around. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The church on Tillman Street was full at 10 in the morning on a Saturday in November, the light coming through the side windows pale and flat, the way November light comes through old glass. Eleanor Price had been known in this neighborhood for 40 years. She had taught Sunday school in this building for 22 of them. The pews held people who had loved her for reasons that had nothing to do with Langston, and he was grateful for that. Grateful for the evidence that her life had been larger than its grief. Langston Price had spent 14 years building Meridian Infrastructure Group from a 2-person engineering consultancy into a 20-employee firm with a regional reputation for one thing: structural accuracy. He had a saying on the firm's letterhead that his mother had liked: "What holds must be designed to hold." He had taken it from something she said to him when he was a teenager, the morning after a fight with a friend that he had handled badly. She had sat across from him at the kitchen table and said, "You can build a wall to keep things out or a wall to hold things up, but you have to decide which one you're building before you start, or it won't do either." He had thought about that for 30 years. He drove a 7-year-old truck and wore his father's watch to every site visit, and was the kind of man who arrived before anyone else, because he believed that a space told you something before people filled it. He was the kind of man who did not speak in a meeting until he was ready to say something that mattered. His team had learned not to misread that. His mother had never needed to learn it. She had built it in him. Eleanor Price had worked nights for 11 years when Langston was a child. She had cleaned offices in a building downtown that, by a particular irony, his firm had later assessed for a structural renovation. She had invested a fixed percentage of every paycheck for 30 years, without exception, in a portfolio she managed through the same broker until the broker retired and she switched to his daughter. She had sold the bookkeeping business she had built over 18 years in 2019 for $840,000. She had reinvested the proceeds. She had not told Langston the full scope of any of it, because she was a private person about money, and because she believed a person should build on their own ground before they stand on someone else's. What Langston did not know, would not know until Claudette Marsh sat across from him in her office, was that his mother had known about Renata for 10 months before she died. She had said nothing. She had made decisions. The graveside was 43 people. Langston stood at the front with his Aunt Dorothy on his left and the pastor to his right. Renata stood 3 rows behind him. He became aware of the man when the pastor began to speak. A movement in his peripheral vision, the particular quality of a presence that doesn't quite fit the geography of grief. He turned once, briefly, and saw them. The man was perhaps 39 or 40. Well-dressed, careful. His hand was on the back of Renata's arm, not her shoulder. A placement that was meant to read as consoling support, and read as something else entirely to anyone paying the right kind of attention. He met Langston's eyes for 1 second and looked away. Langston looked at his mother's coffin. He thought about her hands, the specific roughness of her palms that never went away, even after the night cleaning work had been replaced by the bookkeeping business, and the bookkeeping business had been replaced by retirement. He thought about the way she had held his face when he was small, cupping it with both hands to make sure he was looking at her before she said something she needed him to hear. He thought about the last time he had seen her, 2 weeks before she died, sitting in the chair by her window with the afternoon light on her face and a cup of tea going cold on the side table. And the way she had looked at him when he came through the door. The specific, complete look of a woman who has already decided what she is going to carry and what she is going to put down. He thought about all of that, and he let it be all of that. He did not look back at Renata and the man beside her. He noticed one thing, and he filed it. The man's left hand, when it moved from Renata's arm to his own coat pocket, wore a ring that was not a wedding ring. A silver band. Wrong finger. Wrong hand. He had seen that ring before, in a photograph on Renata's phone, in the half-second before she tilted the screen away, 11 months ago. He had noted it then. He noted it now. He let it be noted, and nothing more. Not today. He said goodbye to his mother. He stood at the grave for a long time after the service ended, and the other mourners had moved toward their cars. Aunt Dorothy stayed beside him, without speaking. That was what he had always loved about Dorothy. She understood that some things did not need to be filled with words. 8 years before that Saturday, Langston had spent 3 weekends rewiring the electrical panel in the house he and Renata had moved into the spring after their wedding. A renovation the previous owners had left half-finished. He had done it himself, on his own time, because it needed doing and because he was the kind of man who did not leave things half-finished. Renata had painted the kitchen that same weekend. They had eaten takeout on the floor of the living room because all the furniture was pushed to one wall. He had believed genuinely in the thing they were building. Over the 2 years before his mother died, that belief had been operating on less evidence than it deserved. Renata had grown quieter in ways that were easy to explain and hard to name. Evenings that used to have an explanation had stopped having one. Phone calls she took in the car, or in the bathroom with the door closed, or by stepping outside in a coat that she hadn't mentioned putting on. He had noticed. He had extended the interpretation that cost him less, one more time, and then again. His project manager, David, had said to him once, directly, the way David said things, that Langston was the best read engineer he had ever worked with. Not technically. In the room. You catch the thing the client doesn't know they're telling you, David had said. You catch it every time. Langston had laughed at the time. He had not been using that skill at home. He had been choosing not to. That was what he understood, standing at his mother's grave, in the cold November air with Dorothy beside him, and the last of the mourners pulling out of the lot. His mother had seen what he was choosing not to. She had made her decisions accordingly. He did not know yet what those decisions were. He would understand them in 2 weeks. That was what she hadn't said to him. That was what she had done instead. Her name was Claudette Marsh. She had been Eleanor Price's personal attorney for 22 years, 67 years old, with silver hair cut close and reading glasses on a beaded chain, a precise and unhurried manner that Langston associated with people who had spent their lives in rooms where every word had weight. She had written Eleanor's first will in the year after Langston's father died. She had written the last one in October, 6 weeks before Eleanor's condition became critical. She called Langston on the Monday after the funeral and asked him to come to her office. He came that Tuesday afternoon. He sat across from her desk. She set her reading glasses on her nose and looked at him in the way of a woman who has been carrying something for someone and is finally permitted to set it down. "I need you to know some things before the formal reading," she said. "Your mother asked me to make sure you heard certain parts privately first. I'm going to honor that," she told him when his mother had found out. January, 10 months before she died. Eleanor had been told by her neighbor, a woman named Jean, who had seen Renata's car parked on a street she had no reason to be parked on, consistently, on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, for 3 months. Jean had told Eleanor because she did not know how to tell Langston, and she trusted Eleanor to know what to do with the information. Eleanor had sat with it for 2 weeks. Then she had called Claudette. "She told me she wasn't going to tell you," Claudette said. Not because she didn't want to. Because she had, at most, a year left, and she wanted that year to be about what she and you had together, not about this. Langston was quiet for a long time. "She made changes to the estate plan in October," Claudette said. "Let me show you what she built." She opened the folder. Eleanor Price's estate had a total value of $26 million. The family home on Tillman Street paid off, appraised at $390,000. An investment portfolio she had been building for 31 years, now valued at $87 million. The proceeds from the bookkeeping business sale reinvested and grown to $1 million over 4 years. Small additional accounts. Everything documented, organized, dated. The financial record of a woman who had treated every dollar she earned with the same deliberate attention she had given everything else. Langston looked at the number on the page. He had known his mother was careful with money. He had not known the scope of what that care had built. "There's more," Claudette said. In October, she explained, when Eleanor updated the will, she had added a specific provision. The full estate was to pass to Langston in a discretionary trust structure, a vehicle that, under the advice of an estate attorney Claudette had brought in for the purpose, was constructed to be legally insulated from marital property claims. This was not accidental. Eleanor had asked specifically whether it was possible to protect the estate in this way, had been told yes under the circumstances, and had directed Claudette to proceed. "She understood what she was doing," Claudette said. "She understood it clearly. She asked me every question twice." Langston set his hands flat on the table. "There's one more thing," Claudette said. She reached into the folder. She wrote a letter. It's to be read aloud at the formal will reading. "I wanted you to hear it first." Claudette read it slowly. Eleanor's voice in the language of it was unmistakable, direct, warm, without excess. She wrote that she had known for most of the year what she had not said aloud. She wrote that she had made her decisions not out of anger, because anger had not been what she felt, but out of love. The specific love of a woman who had spent 30 years building something for her son and intended to make sure it reached him whole. She wrote that she wanted him to understand, when the time came and he was ready to receive it, that the life she had built was a record of what she believed he was worth. She wanted him to build on it accordingly. She wanted him to know that she had never once, in 41 years, doubted what he was made of. The last line of the letter was 4 words. "You already know how." Langston sat in the chair across from Claudette for a long time without speaking. He didn't move fast. That's what people never understand about this part. His own attorney, Arthur Webb, had reviewed the estate documentation by Friday. The trust structure was sound. The protective provision was correctly constructed and would withstand a marital property challenge. The estate would transfer to Langston cleanly, fully, and beyond Renata's reach, regardless of what happened next with the marriage. What happened next with the marriage was not a question Langston was answering yet. He was giving himself the time his mother had not taken from him. He was grieving her properly. He was letting the two things be separate things, the loss and the accounting. He had learned from her that you did not have to carry everything at once. You decided what the structure needed to bear, and you built accordingly. He said nothing to Renata about what he had learned. He moved through the 2 weeks before the will reading the way he moved through a project in the early stages, observing, not yet acting, building his understanding of the full load before he committed to anything. Renata asked him twice about the will reading. She asked what she should expect. She asked whether she should bring anything. She asked these questions with the particular quality of someone who has been calculating a figure and is looking for confirmation that the calculation is correct. He answered her plainly and gave her nothing beyond the date, the time, and the address. He watched her face when she thought he wasn't watching. He saw the specific quality of a person who has been waiting for a long time and believes the wait is almost over. He thought about his mother sitting in the chair by her window with the afternoon light on her face. He thought about the last look she had given him when he came through the door. She had already known. She had already handled it. All he had to do was show up. Langston arrived 30 minutes early. Claudette's conference room was on the 6th floor, a long table, pale walls, one window facing west toward the city. The afternoon light was flat and even, the kind of light that flattened shadows and made everything visible. Arthur Webb arrived at 1:40. Claudette arranged her folders in the order of the reading. Aunt Dorothy arrived at 1:55 and sat beside Langston without ceremony. Renata arrived at 2:01. She came in composed, appropriate, in the specific manner of a person who is prepared for a meeting they believe they understand. She sat across from Langston. She looked at Claudette's folders. She looked at Dorothy. Something moved quickly across her face when she saw Dorothy, a small recalibration, but she settled it and looked toward Claudette. Claudette opened the reading at exactly 2:00 by the clock on the wall. She read the estate summary first. The individual assets, the accounts, the appraisals, each line in order, each number stated plainly. When she reached the total, $26 million, Renata's hands moved on the table. A small adjustment. Her eyes did not change, but her hands did. The figure was not the figure she had been calculating. Claudette continued. She described the trust structure. She described its terms. She read the specific provision, the language Eleanor had directed to be included, establishing that the estate passed to Langston outright and exclusively, structured and protected as a matter of the testator's express and deliberate intent. She read the legal description of what that protection meant and did not mean. She read it at the same pace she had read everything else. Renata's attorney, who had accompanied her, was writing something on a notepad. He stopped writing. He read the provision again. Claudette set that document down. She picked up the letter. She said, Mrs. Price included a personal letter to her son to be read into the record at the will reading. I'll read it now. She read it the way she had read it to Langston 4 days ago, slowly, without performance, in Eleanor's words and Eleanor's rhythm. The room was very still. When she reached the passage about what Eleanor had known, and when she had known it, the passage that was addressed to Langston but named no one else, the room became a different kind of still. The kind that happens when a truth that has been held in one person's hands is finally released into the air. Renata put her hand on the table. She did not sit down quickly enough. Langston did not move toward her. Dorothy reached for the water glass and placed it in front of her without comment. The attorney beside Renata steadied her by the arm. She recovered in a few seconds, not fainted all the way through, but the specific collapse of a person whose legs have received information the rest of them is not ready to process. She sat in the chair and looked at the table. Claudette waited until the room was ready. Then she finished the letter. You already know how. The room was quiet. Langston looked at Renata. She was still looking at the table. He said it quietly. He said it without anger, because anger was not what he felt. He felt something clearer than that, and colder and more permanent. She used her last good months protecting what she built for me, because she understood what you were doing long before I let myself see it. He buttoned his jacket. He shook Arthur's hand. He thanked Claudette. He walked out with Dorothy beside him. He did not look back. It did not happen all at once. The divorce was filed in January. The estate trust was challenged, briefly, by Renata's attorney, and the challenge resolved exactly as Arthur Webb had said it would resolve. The protective provision held. The $26 million transferred to Langston cleanly and completely. Renata received what the marital estate entitled her to, which was not what she had been timing her next move around. She moved to another city by spring. What she and the man from the funeral built together or did not build, Langston did not know and did not follow. She was carrying the weight of what she had chosen the way a person carries something that doesn't get lighter with time. Not dramatically, just permanently, in the specific way of a thing that cannot be put down. Langston kept the house on Tillman Street. He did not sell it. He spent 3 weekends in February going through his mother's things with Dorothy, carefully, the way his mother would have done it, with the understanding that everything in the house had been placed there deliberately and deserved to be moved deliberately. He found, in the kitchen drawer where his mother kept recipe cards, a card written in her handwriting for the jollof rice she had made every birthday of his life. Exact measurements. Her notes in the margins. He folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. He cooked it the following Sunday, at her stove, in her kitchen, in the house where she had worked nights and invested carefully and built something that could not be taken from him. He ate it alone, and it tasted exactly right. On a Sunday morning in March, Langston sat on the back porch of the house on Tillman Street, with his mother's coffee mug and the recipe card on the table beside him. The neighborhood was waking up. A dog down the block. Someone pulling a car out of a driveway. The particular quality of a Sunday that has not yet decided what it's going to be. He thought about the woman who had sat in the chair by the window with the afternoon light on her face and looked at him when he came through the door, knowing what she knew, carrying what she had decided to carry. Giving him the time she had left without diminishing it with the truth she had already built her protection around. He thought about the last line of her letter. 4 words. He set down his coffee. He looked at the neighborhood his mother had lived in for 40 years, the block she had walked every morning, the church 2 streets over where 43 people had come to say goodbye to a woman who had earned every one of them. He thought, she was right. He already knew how. He went inside and began. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.